as Ruben said, I've been involved in two businesses really. One has got its roots here in Southampton University. I'll explain a little bit more about that later on. And the other one was a company that was involved in the oil and gas business. Both sort of came from very different places, but they have a lot of things in common. But as I said, I'll talk more about that later on. So the word entrepreneur, I noticed that it was banded on me earlier on by Ruben. I've never regarded myself as being an entrepreneur. And in actual fact, I often have difficulty in spelling it. Whenever I write it down, the little red line comes up on the spell checker there. So I don't regard myself as an entrepreneur. I've never really invented anything. I've never come up with any brilliant idea or anything like that, like a lot of the people are working on here that are all connected with Future Worlds. Really what I've done, I've made certain lifestyle choices that have taken me down a particular path. And it's been a very interesting, it's a very rewarding path and everything like that. But what I thought I'd do maybe is to start a little bit on my journey. And I guess my initial journey started most probably in a very similar way to many of you here. I did a degree at university, at Cranfield University, in fact, and I graduated with a master's degree in mechanical engineering, all pretty good and everything like that. And like everybody at the time, you were expected to get a job, and I sort of do something that for all your training that you've done and you've got your degree. And that is actually, in fact, what I did. I got a job, and I got a job in the nuclear industry, in the design and development of nuclear power plant. And it was very good. I did it for a few years, but there was something inside me that was saying that it wasn't the right path for me. For many years, I'd had this desire to do something different, to do something for myself and have more control over my own destiny, rather than working for a big company. But I did, as I said, hadn't invented anything, hadn't developed anything. I didn't know what, I didn't know where, and I didn't know how. But that realization that I really wanted to do something different, I wanted to go down a different path, was really one of those sort of moments of truth that you often get within your life. So I was in the wrong place, but I knew roughly what I wanted to do, but didn't know how. But what is very important to say is that taking a career within a large company, developing your career in academia, becoming a doctor, becoming a lecturer and a professor, are very, very laudable things to do, and they are the right things for a lot of people. And society would not function without people devoting their lives and their careers to those things. And we need people like you at the university to be involved in inspiring the next generation, particularly into engineering, science and technology, which there's a huge shortage of. But it wasn't the right path for myself. And once I'd made that decision, and once you make any decision like that within life, all things seem to open up to you. There's opportunities that come up that help you take the particular path that you need to take. And in my sort of entrepreneurial journey, something then happened. And I was exposed, I got an opportunity to be exposed to the American entrepreneurial culture. And we all criticize the Americans for different things, but one of the things they do very well is they're great innovators, they're great entrepreneurs, and they seem to have this ability to not put constraints on themselves or anything like that. They have got such a fantastic, can do, let's go for it attitude. And it's really interesting that Ruben in his work with Future Worlds is taking the model that existed at Stanford and bringing it over here to Southampton University, because that culture is very, very important. But there was a company in the United States called the Structural Dynamics Research Corporation, which was actually founded by the University of Cincinnati. And the guys there developed, it was in the early days of computer-aided engineering design. And we take it all for granted now, all the solids modeling, the 3D drafting, and all of that stuff, and all the simulation work that's done. But this was in the sort of the 1980s and the very early days of that. And they developed a lot of the technology associated with that. And they came over to the UK. They wanted to recruit a couple of British engineers. So they recruited myself and a few of my cohort from Cranfield, and they brought us into the company. And it was, in retrospect, a tremendous opportunity to work within that environment. And have the mentors, to be working with those mentors that were the American sort of early entrepreneurs, was a tremendous thing to have the experience of doing. The other thing that they did, as an aside, when they recruited the British guys into the company, they actually paid us twice as much as we were getting paid in the company that we'd started on. And that was not because we were good, it was because they didn't realize how poorly paid engineers and scientists were at that time. So there's not a lot of change now over the last sort of 20 or 30 years. But the corollary to that is that you just had to work 24 hours a day. So by luck, and I was put into that environment, and I guess I was able to cut my teeth on the sort of things that they were doing and learn from the people that were going through that. And that was of tremendous value to, in what the journey that I was then going to be carrying on. So I still knew that I wanted to do something for myself, and I hadn't actually then sort of worked out how or what. But there was a bit of good fortune there, and the thing that I'll be coming back to throughout the talk is that as you go through life, there's a lot of things depend on luck and being in the right place at the right time and everything like that. However, and if you know what you want, you take advantage of that and you can see those opportunities. But the other thing that happens is when you're looking over the duration of something, 20, 30 years, then what happens actually is bad luck comes in as much quantities as good luck does. But it then really all depends on how you manage your way through that bad luck and those situations there. So if we have a look, so I haven't started on my, I'm not even on the entrepreneurial starting blocks at the moment, but there are a few lessons that I've learned. And the first one is to know what you want from life. There's so many people go through life not really knowing what they want out of life. And whether it is whatever goal you're trying to achieve, whether it is to set up a business, be an entrepreneur, achieve something in the academic environment, you've got to know what you want from life. And the second thing that I'd learned was to have a vision of the person that you want to be. And I had the great advantage of working with people that I could see, I want to be like you. And whatever walk of life you're in, it's very, very important to have the role models that you can aspire to. And they may be fictitious role models, they may be role models in academia or in business, whatever sphere you're working in, it's important to have those role models and the vision of the person that you want to be. And the other thing is that, when you know that, your opportunities will happen. And as I said, throughout the journey of running businesses, there are a lot of things that happen. And as I said, lucky breaks come and you take advantage of those. But those lucky breaks are there all the time if you're tuned into them and if you know the direction in which you're going. However, the setbacks, as I said, will come in equal proportions, but it's very, very important as to how you learn with those and how you deal with them. There's a book that I read very, very many years ago, and some of you may have come across it. It's called The Road Less Traveled. It's by a guy called M. Scott Peck, and he wrote a whole series of books. But the premise of all of his books that he's written, on the first page of the first book, he basically says life is not going to be easy. It's not going to go the way that you planned, and all sorts of things are going to happen. However, once you deal with that and recognize that, you can then get on with living your life and achieving the things that you want to achieve. So it's very important there. Now, coming back, the next part of my journey brings me back to Southampton University. And is there anybody here from the Institute of Sound Vibration Research? Great, fantastic. The Institute of Sound Vibration Research, I believe, is one of the most innovative faculties, certainly in the whole of the UK and possibly in the world. Going back even to the 1960s and 1970s, the ISVR has spun out some tremendous companies and ideas that have been developed and have their roots in the ISVR. Particularly in the area of, I mean, some of you guys may be working on it at the moment, but the areas of active noise control, for example, and all of that, the applications of that technology, the technology of monitoring, vibration monitoring and signal analysis. So when you're flying in a plane and you look outside the A380 Airbus and you look at the engines there, you've got the turbines turning round at where the blades are at a fraction of the thing from the casing. All of the continuous monitoring of that is done using the technology that was originally developed in the ISVR. And I can cite many companies that came from the ISVR. And one of those companies was a company called Acoustic Technology. Now, I didn't form acoustic technology. It was formed in the late 60s and 70s by some staff that were working there. But they spun out the company themselves and they developed acoustic technology into a very good company that had its core technology in noise and vibration. And like most companies that get developed, they built it up and then they sold it to a company in Winchester called Peak Holdings. And it was a newly formed company that had just done an IPO. And what happened then in the subsequent years, the company was a total mismatch from the company that had acquired it. And it had gradually then started to disappear and get destroyed. And that happens, that's something that happens quite a lot when small innovative companies are bought by large acquiring corporations. So I was then brought on by Peak Holdings that had acquired Acoustic Technology, and they said, oh, you know something about this technology, will you come on as managing director and sort it out for us? And it was I knew something about the technology, but didn't know anything about running a company or being a managing director. I thought it was a great opportunity and things like that. You know, you're in your early 30s and you think, oh, great, I've made it. And so you just get an opportunity and you go for it, even though you haven't got a clue what you're doing really. But what was very clear was that they shouldn't have bought the company in the first place. And so in partnership with one of the other guys that was actually working in the company, who subsequently became my business partner for the last sort of 25 years, we actually put in a bid to buy the company back off the PLC. Now, we didn't have any money. We had our own debts with mortgages and everything like that. So you think, well, how can you buy a company without any money? Well, we borrowed, scraped and scrounged what was effectively the deposit for the company. And we then got the rest of the money from an organization, a venture capital company called 3i, who they're still around, but they've gone right at market in terms of the types of deals that they do. And what they did then, we're talking about the heady 1980s here, they loaded the company up with lots of debt. And we had lots of debt, and the company was losing money, but we had our company. We were on that road. We had that basic business that we could then use to start and grow something bigger. So we had that vision, but we had I certainly wouldn't recommend anybody to do it in that way. You certainly couldn't now with the attitude from the banks, so they wouldn't allow you to borrow. But in those days, the banks just threw money at you and put you into debt and everything like that. And it did backfire quite a few years later. But we didn't even think about that. We had a small business which we wanted to grow into a big business, and that's what it was all about. And throughout the talk here, with regard to my experience and my journey, what I'm not talking about is the very specialist niche businesses that we see within future worlds, where there is a very unique bit of technology that is needed to be spun out into a company, and then that grows. What we're talking about here is more of a growth of a business that is already there in a conventional area. So we're taking a basic technology. Now, the most fundamental thing that we had to do then, and I would argue that the most fundamental thing that any company should ask itself is, what business is it actually in? Because it is really a truly fundamental question, because once deciding what business you're in will determine what direction that company goes in, what it does in the future. And I'm going to illustrate that. I'm going to illustrate this. It's a hypothetical example, but I'm going to go back to the middle of the 18th century. I'm going to talk about horsewhips. Now, this is what this is. It's a horsewhip. Now, imagine there were two companies in the 1850s, and both manufactured horsewhips. And the first company said, we manufacture the best horsewhips in the world. They're bought by the landed gentry. They use them to make their horses go faster, as you can see that guy up there. And we are the best company in the world, and we are going to define our business as being in horsewhips. And okay, that's fine. Now, there's another company over here, the company B. They were competitors to this company here, and they said, well, we also manufacture horsewhips, and we believe we're the best company in the world to manufacture horsewhips. And they said, but we do a couple of other things as well. We make stirrups and saddles and everything like that. We really think that we're in the transport industry, not in the horsewhips industry. So they define their business in a different way. So moving on to present day, the first company still manufactures horsewhips, and it's got a very good business, and it's used by all the major jockeys around the world, and it manufactures and produces the best horsewhips. Now, the second company that defines its business as being in transportation, today it's now a $50 billion third-party transportation logistics department. It's a hypothetical story, but it does illustrate the point that depending upon how a company defines its business will determine the direction in which it'll go in the future. So any of you here that are at the early stages of your journey in developing products and services in your company, is to really ask the fundamental question, what business are you in? Because that will determine where you take it, the opportunities that will come along, and where it will go. So what business you're in, an absolutely fundamental question. Now, there was a third company, in fact, that also manufactured horsewhips, and they're actually doing well today as well, but I won't go into that side of the business. So, okay, what I'm going to talk about now is the second law of thermodynamics, and I expect you're all wondering, where is he going with it? He's talking about horsewhips, he's talking about this, and now he's going to talk about the second law of thermodynamics. We're in a university, and I would hope that there may be a few people here that know basically what the second law of thermodynamics says. I won't ask you to do the equations because I don't know them or anything like that, but I'm sure you do. Basically, the second law of thermodynamics says that, in lots of different ways, but nothing stays in the same state forever. Everything decays. Everything sort of reduces down to the state that it originally was. And for example, if you were to take our horsewhip, for example, if I were to leave that down there, would it still be there in 10 years' time? Yes. Would it still be there in 10,000 years' time? Very unlikely. It wouldn't be. It would have all deteriorated, rotted, gone to powder, and degraded, and everything like that. And everything in the universe ultimately goes back to its own state. But the other thing is that you have to put energy into something in order to create it. And the one thing about business is that businesses obey the second law of thermodynamics. So in order to create it, you have to put energy, like this ice cube here, you have to put energy into it in order to create it. And that's no different to the business that you're creating. You need that. What I call it is entrepreneurial energy that you need to build that business up. But the other thing of that is that if you don't sustain the energy that you do to create the company, if you don't sustain that energy on a continuous basis, it will again disappear. It will go back to its state. And as I said, businesses follow the same pattern as anything else in the world and in the universe. They obey the second law of thermodynamics. So in terms of remembering there, it is that businesses do the same thing. And it's something really, I'll get on to later on, it's something really that large companies don't actually realize. They were created with a huge entrepreneurial energy of the original founders, but they often get to the stage where they don't understand the fact that they need to keep up that energy in order to keep the innovation and everything like that going. And there are some companies that aren't very good at that, and they will disappear. So just summarising then where we are now, where we are on this journey, it's know what you want, as I said, know where you're going, but have the energy to sustain that journey. If you're talking about growing a company over 10, 20, 30 years, you need that level of energy to keep it up day in, day out, year in and year out. And you need to maintain that energy in order to do that, which is a very, very important thing. So if you take from there, what else do you need to know about if you're building and growing a business? Well, there's all sorts of things. There's masses of things which I was talking about earlier on in the talk. There's finance, there's tax, there's cash flow, marketing, business planning, export, HR, employment, all sorts of things. There's masses of things you need to know. But are those really important? Well, you've got to know them. You've got to find out about them. But are they really that difficult? No, they're not. And you can go, as you come across the need to know them, you can find out everything you need to know about all of those things. So what really makes a difference? What knowledge really makes a difference to your business when you're creating it and when you're building it over a period of time? Well, there's two fundamental things that make a huge difference. Firstly is vision, and the second one is values. Every single business and every single thing is built on somebody's vision. And you have to have a vision of what you want to create and what you want to achieve. And as you bring in more people into the company, people buy into your vision. That's why they join you on your journey, because you have that vision of where you want to go and where you want to take the business. And the second thing I believe is the values. All of you here will have your own values. And I believe you have to embed your own values into the business in everything you do. Because again, when people join the company, when people join you and work with you, they buy into your values that you have and the values in which you believe that the company should be run from. And everybody will have different values. You'll have, ethical values, you'll have values of excellence and everything like that. It doesn't matter what it is. They will be your values and they will be your vision. And that's what makes good companies, is companies that are driven by vision and driven by values. In the company that we created, right from the very beginning, in the first company in acoustic technology, we had three fundamental values. The first one was technical excellence. And because we're a technically based company, and any technically based company has to deliver technical excellence. You've got to be a business that delivers things in the best possible technical way. And however, what you have to do as well in parallel to that, if you're going to be a successful business, you have to achieve business excellence. So it's very typical with engineers and scientists. They get so focused on what they want to do and so interested in that they forget they're actually trying to run a business and make money and make profit. And so that's the other side. You've got to balance technical excellence and people excellence. So those were two of our fundamental values. But the third one was that of business, of people excellence. And that, coming back to people, it is the most fundamental thing about a company. And I don't care whether a business is a manufacturing company, a service company, a technically based company. No matter what it is just about the people. All a company is a collection of people working together with a common purpose and a common goal and common values. That is what makes a company. All of the hardware and everything like that is not the business. The business at the end of the day is the people. So we realize that you have to have the best people within the organization. And that means all of the time recruiting at the highest possible level and not being afraid of recruiting people better than yourself. And I personally didn't find that very hard to do, really. But it is very important to do that, to recruit people, the right people, not the same as you. You don't want clones of you in the business. You want different types of people, but you want the best people in that area. And recognize that it is the people, it's individuals, and those people coming together in teams which really make the business what it is. And so those were our 3 values. You will have other values. It doesn't matter what they are, but if they enable the company to do the things it needs to do, if it's built on those values. Briefly on growth and sustainability and business management systems. Now, you may sort of say, right, as I said, what we're talking about here is not a company that is formed very, very quickly, has a dash to the finishing post, and is sold on within a couple of years' time. What we're really talking here is growing a sustainable business over a period of 5, 10, 20, in our case, sort of 25 years for the two businesses. You're talking the long term. How do you build that growth, and how do you build that sustainability into the business? In the last company that we created, it started off with Roger and I sitting in a room, looking at each other, wondering what we're going to do, and it ended up turning over $60 million. It employed 300 people and in operations in the United States, here in Europe, the Middle East, and Australia. So how do you go from that to that? And what are the important things there? Well, one of the key things as you get bigger is business management systems. And you may sort of think, oh, business management systems, yeah, quality and all this sort of stuff. It's not very interesting. It's boring. It's not relevant. Well, it is hugely relevant, because the model of most good businesses is that you create a small business and you replicate it, and you layer it, and you do it over and over again in different areas, different regions, and everything like that. So you have your basic business model that makes money, and then you replicate it. Now, as an example of this, there are some companies that are actually brilliant at it. If at one end of the scale, if we go down to McDonald's at the end of Burgess Road there and order a Big Mac and medium fries, you will get you'll know exactly what you're going to get. That burger will be flipped after so many minutes, and you'll get the exact number of fries in that bag every time you go in there. And if you go to Beijing, if you go to Moscow and order the same thing, you will get exactly the same thing, the same burger, same number of fries and everything like that. Even the person that serves you behind the desk with their little lapels and stars and everything like that, they will say the same thing to you, but maybe in Mandarin or maybe in Russian rather than English. And they do that by having a very, very clearly defined business model and business management system as to how you deliver fast food. Now, you may say that that's not sort of relevant. We're technologists, we're engineers, and we're scientists and everything like that. But I'd like to illustrate it with a company that I've got tremendous respect for and admire greatly, and that is a company called Accenture. I'm sure you've heard of them. They employ something like nearly 400,000 specialist technologists, engineers, scientists, in all areas across the whole spectrum. They've got a market capitalization of $60 billion, and they operate in 120 different countries. And even last year, they hired 100,000 new PhDs, scientists, developers, specialists, and everything like that. an organisation at the sort of the highest end of what they do. And how do they manage to assimilate 100,000 people into their organisation? You know, do they turn up on a Monday morning and sort of start doing something? When they come in, they're bought into a very, very sophisticated set of processes that define the way that Accenture works. And it's broken down into individual cells, and those cells react, you know, sort of work with the clients in different areas and different things, have different products. It's very, very sophisticated. They hold the whole thing together via their business management systems. And business management systems are not boring. They're absolutely vital to have when you grow a company, because you can't do it any other way. Otherwise, you get people, you know, turning up in Brisbane in your organisation, and they will just do it their way. But you can't have it doing that. You've got to have it done the way that you want, and you've got to embed embed your values and vision into that business management system. And in actual fact, and it develops over a period of time. It starts in a very simple way. But what we did, in fact, we built our business management systems, or developed them, on our values. So the 3 values that we had of technical, business and people excellence, those were the foundations of our business management system. So everything we did, every process that we did, was actually ultimately linked back to that particular value that we wanted to uphold. And that way, decisions are very easy, because you just say, if you have a complex decision to make, you just say, does it uphold our values, yes or no? And if it does, then you do it. So it allows you to grow the company in a controlled way. Otherwise, everything is chaotic, particularly as you go into other countries and you go into other markets. So that's particularly important. Now, the other thing, sort of telling it how it feels as you develop a business and as you run a business, it's very much akin to spinning plates. There are lots of things that you've got going on at any one time, and one of a person that is absolutely very, very singly focused at what they do, and they want to do that well, and they just look at that one particular thing, tend not to be the best people to be building a business. If you are like that, then what you must do is bring people around you that can see the bigger picture and can actually multitask at lots of different things. Because as you grow a business, you have got to handle all of these things that, you know, like I said, the finance and the marketing and the HR and the IT, all of that stuff. You need those things on board. But very often in the early stages, you're doing it all of yourself. You're becoming that expert. As the company gets bigger, you can afford to take on those people to do it for you and bring in their specializations. But it's very much like spinning. It's very much like spinning plates. You're trying to do lots of things at the same time. And part of the great frustration is you're most probably not doing either of them very well. And that's one of the not so much satisfying things when you're running a business. You want to do, you know, everything very well. I mean, I'm a perfectionist, and I've always felt hugely frustrated because I'm never able to do things to the standard that I want to do them. Because if you did, then one of those plates would fall down. You'd be concentrating on one of those plates at the expense of the other one. So you've got to keep that balance between all of them. Now, the other thing if you remember, I referred earlier on to luck, good luck and bad luck happening and everything like that. And one of the things that happens is that every so often something will happen that will knock your plates over, or knock a plate over or something like that. And you've got to expect that to happen. And it may not be your fault, it may be nothing to do with you, it may be the market that you're in, the environment that you're in, but something will happen when everything is going well to knock your plates off, to try and sort of make your business fall over. And I'll just tell you just a very short anecdote of what happened to ourselves. It was in the when we were building up acoustic technology, we managed to pay off a lot of our debts and everything like that. We were getting in a reasonable level of security as far as the business was concerned. But our clients were the likes of BP, Shells, and those big companies. And one of the things that those companies do, they don't pay you very promptly. So you've usually got to wait 6 months to get your money. But however, in the meantime, you've got salaries to pay, you've got the VAT man to pay, the PAYE and everything like that. So you have this issue of cash flow. And so we had blue chip debtors in those companies, and we needed that gap financed. And a common way of doing it, certainly then, not so much now, was to finance that debt on the back of the debtor book. And that's what we did for many years. And the banks were very, very pleased to do that because they had blue chip debtors as their security. And one Monday morning, somebody from head office in a bank in Southampton turned up at our offices. I won't say which bank. And they said, "We are going to cut off your finance on Friday. We want all of our loans paid back and by Friday." We said, "Well, you can't. We'll go bankrupt." They said, "Yes, we know. So unless you pay, we will foreclose on you, and we'll go bankrupt." And the shock of that was that, that's not the actual guy there, but he was certainly like that. And so we were doing very well. We were making lots of profit. We were nominally sort of quite successful. We'd built the company up. We increased turnover by fourfold. We were very profitable. And then that sort of happens. So, to cut a long story short, we managed to get through it. We actually managed to get over it by buying time. We also borrowed, scraped and scrounged money from everywhere, remortgaged our houses again, borrowed money from here, there, and everywhere. And I even went to the tax office and sort of said to the nice lady in the tax office, "Can you give me another week, before paying the VAT bill?" And she said, "Well, I shouldn't, but I will." And then bought a bunch of flowers and everything like that. So we just bought like a few days, a week at a time. We just bought that thing, and we eventually managed to get new facilities on board. But the concept was that we weren't going to fail. It was just that we never even considered the fact that we may be in trouble. And it was totally blind. We didn't sort of, looking back, we risked everything again. We'd already risked something the first time round, and we risked it all the second time round. And I was sort of thinking, well, if it all goes wrong, where do I live? Do I buy a tent or something like that? Because then your houses are all mortgaged up. But I certainly wouldn't recommend anybody doing it like that. There are much smarter ways of doing things. There's much smarter ways now of getting finance. We shouldn't have even started in that situation. But the point that I'm making is that the unexpected can happen, and you've got to deal with that unexpected. And we did deal with it, and we did then go from strength to strength in the business. But that can certainly happen. Now, related to this is something that I'd like to bring up, which is about family and business. One of the plates that you've got spinning there is actually family. And while you're focused on achieving your ambitions and achieving your dream, around you is usually a family and all the people around you that you care for. They're also sharing that process with you. And sometimes you can be so focused that you don't actually realize that. You maybe don't realize what they're going through, that they're there. And it's very easy to build up a company and be successful, but you can't go back and start reliving your life. Your children only grow up once, and it's important to understand that throughout your journey. And keeping that balance between family and business is absolutely very, very important, because at the end of the day, you may think that, at the time that there are much more important things, there's important meetings to go to, deals to be done and everything like that. But when you look back, they don't really mean anything. What means a lot is why you're doing it. It's your family and everything that's close to you. That is the important thing. And it is, one lesson that has been learned, I think, is to keep that balance and to keep that focus on family, of which is very, very important. Okay, I'll get on now into selling a business. Ultimately, a business is going to be sold because you'll have put all your efforts in and everything like that. And at some stage, usually most small, medium-sized businesses are sold at some stage. And there's two ways of selling it. You know, either to a trade sale to a large company, or you have a placement on the stock exchange, an IPO. Now, one of the sad facts, as I mentioned a little bit earlier on, was that most businesses, most small innovative businesses or medium-sized innovative businesses, when they're sold to a large corporate, there's a statistics which is very worrying, which is 80% of those acquisitions of small companies by large corporations fail. And there is nothing worse than something that you've created being bought by a large company you think it is, then all of a sudden it starts to fall apart. If you remember when I spoke about acoustic technology and the original guys at the university selling to the company in Winchester, that happened. The company gradually disappeared. Then when we sold ATL, as in sort of 10 years later, we sold to a French multinational, and exactly the same thing happened. It was a French company that had a different culture to it, a different environment, and what they do, they feel they want to get into the technology that you've developed, but they don't understand the culture that was used to create that company. So if you think about it, I spoke about vision and I talk about values, and those being the really important things that drive the company forward. And all the people in the company have bought into that. They buy into your vision, they buy into your values. Then all of a sudden, that company is put into another company, a much bigger company, that has a different set of values and a different vision. And it's a total mismatch. And this is, you know, I believe what happens and why things fail. So it's so important that if you're selling a company, that you work very closely with the company that's going to acquire you and really understand what values does it have, what's its vision, because if the two things come together and they don't match, then it's not going to work. Whatever you've created is going to be destroyed. And it's not so much the company, but it's the people in the company that came along with you, that bought into your vision, that all of a sudden are going to be left in the business that they didn't buy into. And you've moved on and you're okay, but you've left all those people behind. Now, the second time, we actually got it right. You know, so we learned from our mistakes before, and we were acquired then by a company called Petrofac, and which is a large FTSE 100 oil services company. And Petrofac was very good. It's the chief exec there is a guy called Ayman Asfari. He is a brilliant entrepreneur, and he understood what was involved. He allowed us to operate the company, to ring fence it, and also to maintain our own values within the business, which was so important to have. And as a result of that, the company then, when it came into Petrofac, continued its growth curve, and it allowed it to do it. But it was only through very, very deliberate understanding, getting the terms and conditions of coming on board into that company that allowed it to do that. Now, there's several reasons why big companies aren't very good at that. And it all comes back to, it's all linked to that second law of thermodynamics, which I spoke about earlier on. Every company is formed in an entrepreneurial way, even if it's formed in 1850, whether it's Michelin or something like the Rolls-Royce. They're all formed, by innovators and entrepreneurs. However, most companies now are actually built on process. And I spoke about process and the importance of process, so they need that. But the problem is the huge thing now in large corporations is risk management. And you'll have all been subject to the aspect of risk management. Everything, the whole culture is risk management. And a company now has a statutory duty to understand the risks of that business and mitigate them, and do all sorts of things in order to mitigate those risks, sustain the company, and so it doesn't fall over. Now the problem is with regard to innovation is that the innovation and entrepreneurship is actually linked to risk taking, and the two things, risk management and risk taking, don't go well together. So what tends to happen, the culture in the large company is a risk management culture, and the culture that you want on innovation is risk taking. So you have to try and match those two well. And the company, there are some very, very innovative companies in the UK which do recognize that and are able to manage innovation very well and bring in innovation into their company. But it is something that you have to give as much attention to at the end of the cycle as you do the beginning of the cycle there. So that's what we do. So conclusions. I think we're just about sort of running on time there. Conclusions, like a good engineer and scientist, you're always taught to have a beginning, a middle, and an end, and a conclusion at the end of your report. So I haven't been able to ever to get away from that. So conclusions then from my talk in that journey. It really is what were the key things, what were the important things that really mattered on that journey. Well, firstly, as I said, to know what you want from life. And as I said, when that moment of truth came to me, it all started to happen. But unless you know what you really want from life, you're not going to get there because you haven't got that map in your head. The second thing is really to have the vision of the person that you want to be. And that is trying to expose yourself to people that are in that area that you work in. Role models, it's great to have role models. They may be imaginary role models, they may be real ones, they may be TV role models. It doesn't matter, but you can always sort of refer to those people and ask them, well, what do you do? You know, sort of how would that person handle it? So have a vision of the person that you want to be. And as I said then, luck, opportunities happen all the time. And it's all a question of being tuned into them. They will, and as you saw, I had several sort of lucky breaks and opportunities, but I firmly believe that if those weren't there, it would have been something else, because you just pick up on the opportunities that are there. You tune your mind into it. But it's not all good, because what will happen, as I said there, setbacks will come in equal proportions. I gave one example there, and they happen all the time. So it's not a question, and statistically, from a mathematical perspective, if you take anything over a period of 20, 30 years, then you're going to have equal good luck and bad luck. You can't play the casinos for a week and expect to come out winning. You can play it for 10 minutes and you might win. But over a long period of time, the statistics will happen, and you'll get the good luck and the bad luck in equal proportions there. The next point is to be driven by your vision. And really sort of believe in yourself. It's so easy to be knocked over and have self-doubt and everything like that. But if you've got a vision of who you are, what you want to do, and what you want to create, you have to have that and be driven by it. And the second thing is to be guided by your values. And everybody has values. Everybody is good inside, and everybody knows what values they live by. They may be different, and it doesn't matter. But your values that you have as an individual need to be built into your business, and everything that business does needs to reflect those values. And the final thing I said was to have the energy. Building, creating, and business over a long period of time does require a lot of energy, and you will find the energy if all of those things are right. But you do need to be able to sustain that energy all the time in order to build the business and to maintain it in the position that you want it to be. There's just sort of one final point I'll finish in. For me, it's been a very, very good journey. And whatever your journey is to have fun on the way. That's what it's all about. You've got to absolutely enjoy what you're doing. So, ladies and gentlemen, I thank you very much for being so patient and listening to my story here today. And I'd like to thank you very much. It's been a pleasure to have you in the audience. Thank you very much.